Now, today's episode is going to be something everyone's been talking about, which is all about incident response. How do we go about incident response in the cybersecurity space? But before we go ahead, don't forget to, you know what to do, subscribe. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Just Unsecure. Before we go ahead, I just like to say thank you to everyone who subscribes to the channel. We're now having a 500 subscriber base and more, and just wanted to say thank you all. I'm BA and my co-host OO, and we'll be talking about incident response. But before we go ahead and talk about incident response, diving straight into it, I know most people are saying, what's the difference between an event, incident response, and a breach? It might be obvious to everyone within the profession, but for the layman out there, I'll let you kick it off. Oh, what's the difference between those three?
You know, when you're starting from what incident is, what event is, what a breach is, I think it's a good start for us to actually lay this down to everybody to say, what is an event? So an event is different from incident, and incident is different from a breach. An event is an observable occurrence, whether in the system or in a network. So it could just mean like, connection to a file share, which is normal. Login successful, login failure. Yeah, that is normal. You visit a page, that is it. But when it comes to security incident, that means this is a computer security incident or an event that violates your organization's computer security policies or procedure. Not necessarily that something has been stolen. But someone who do not need to have access to something have access to something. You have multiple failure of login. Yeah, that's a security incident. And this is something you need to properly investigate. A user provides or exposes sensitive information to others. It's still through your organization. Nothing is stolen. But in the case of a breach, that means this event violates confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your system. And in most cases, something big has been stolen away. Or there's a complete denial of service, that your entire system is down. So trying to separate this event is the beginning. You need to have a judgment whether that is a security event or it's just an event. Then you need to say, is this event a breach or just a security incident? I hope I'm not confused that viewers.
No, for me, it's clear. I think for the breach part is obviously, like you said, once something has occurred and it affects CIA confidentiality, integrity, and availability. If any of those three are compromised, then more or less you have a breach within your environment.
Absolutely.
I won't buttress on the other two because I think you did a very perfect clarification on those three things. But what I look at now is the incident response, because where from the incident response, it means for me, for incident response is the way organizations are able to respond to a breach, or even be able to know what is an event, what is an incident, and what is a breach. An incident response is the system, for me, is a systematic way to be able to counter or react to what has occurred. Whether it's an event, whether it's an incident, whether it's a breach. The whole thing is that you have a systematic way in which you respond to things. So like you said earlier, the event and the incidents, knowing what is what has been on. Is this just an event that is occurring? Is this an incident occurring? And if it's a breach, do you have the outplay of what you need to do? We call it a playbook of what you need to do if a particular breach occurs. So if there's a DDoS attack and it's confirmed the DDoS, what is the incident response plan you have in place to be able to react to a DDoS attack. If it's a spamming attack, what is the playbook you have in play to respond to that? Everything lays down to incident response. So for me, incident response is, I would say, is more like a systematic business way of ensuring that business continues. If you understand me, not allowing any incident or any breach bring down the organization. I don't know if you have any more inputs to that.
I think you've nailed it already. You've nailed it, because it's not about if you have a security event or if you have a breach.
Mm-hmm. It's when.
The only question is when. And if you don't have a plan to nip it in the bud, then you cannot bring the system back to secure state, as you have stated. If I may ask, some people said, so apart from what you have mentioned, is there any other benefit for having a...
For me, the other benefit that it depends. Some federations or some countries want you, based on laws, want you to have that in place. Yes. So some agencies might say, okay, what is your incident response plan? So if you have PII data or you have critical infrastructure, you will always have an incident response plan or a strategy. Because the problem, like what you said, is not if you get attacked, is when you will get attacked. And when you do, what is your response plan? That's why it's called an incident response. Being able to react to an event or an incident or a breach that has occurred. How you react to it is much more important than, monitoring it, should I say. Being able to respond. So for me, I think some laws, so most of the regulatory requirements or compliance requirements always have a domain known as incident response that you need to abide to state what you're doing from an incident response perspective.
Absolutely. Another one that I also find very useful to have an incident response as a benefit is being able to use the same information to be able to counter anything that comes that is similar to it. And whether you like it or not, you and I might not be in an organization like forever. So the way you respond to a particular incident can be a bottom line on a starting point for everybody else coming after you, or for an organization to review, or even to have an evidence to present in the court of law to say, yes, it actually happened. And this is it. This is how we collected our information and all of that, because that is what you're going to have on that as well.
And like you truly said, the legal issues what most people don't tend to see. When an incident response is activated, you have to do something called a chain of custody, which means that everything you do within that incident response, whether you're going to get a forensic expert in to come and, look into the incident, there must be that chain of custody. And chain of custody means that every step of your incident response plan is well detailed to the point of you collecting evidence, analyzing the evidence, and showing the evidence in the court of law. Everything must follow a certain pattern and must be legally captured and addressed within the incident response plan. I know we'll be jumping the gun and going quite far away because we're still going to talk about the incident response and the entire process, but I just wanted our viewers to know more about the legal issues when it came to incident response.
Fantastic. Now you have an incident response plan. What are the phases of an incident response?
For me, I think it's already official. It's not us, Just Unsecure talking. There are six main phases. There's the operation, detection,
analysis, notification, remediation,
and lesson learned.
Lesson learned.
Yeah. So maybe for our viewers, let's go through each step by step, because sometimes it's a bit confusing. Like, oh, do I have to do all this in an incident response? I'm like, yeah, yes, you have to if you
Yeah.
want to be able to. That's why I stated chain of custody. Everything must be done in a systematic way. So, from the preparation perspective, do you want to walk us through it?
Yeah. Preparation is definitely, don't go without a policy. So you need to have a policy that talks about your incident response. So that policy is what is signed by your management. Don't forget that policy belongs to management. Your management commitment to incident response is critical, because how will you rally everybody around if your management do not support that? So it's going to be a general statement, of course, that shows the commitment of your management and the purpose. Then the second thing is plan. Plan can have roadmaps for implementation of incident response and all of that. High level guide as well is there. And perhaps I've mentioned something before. And it talked about having a playbook. Playbook is now your procedure. So to say, yes, when this incident happened, I'm going to do A, B, C, D. I'm going to talk to who. I'm going to call this person. I'm going to do A. I'm going to shut down the router. I'm going to do all of this. Yeah, that is a defined. Then you must have defined communication protocols. In your plan, your roles must be there. Who is responsible for what? Contact information must be there of those that are responsible and all that information. Then you define your communication protocol. When should something go to the management? At what stage is an incident become high severity incident that you should be able to escalate? So I will leave detection to you.
Yeah, I think you nailed the first one. That once you do all that, the detection phase is usually human reporting, I would say. We're trying ensuring that you report an incident, or being able to use technology to tune the reading of the logs to be able to read when an event or an incident, and doing some form of correlation. You have tools such as, like, the same security, incident, event monitoring, which helps you when you get all your logs. You're able to basically just, tune the same to say, okay, if this log shows that somebody is trying to log in more than 10 times or 5 times, it raises an alert that, user A tried logging more than what we've stated in the policy. And that is everything you tune within your SIM to be able to read the logs properly. You also have other technology like IDPS and IPS, intrusion detection and intrusion prevention system. The whole point of detection is ensuring you're able to catch it at an early stage, catch that incident or that breach at an early stage. And the only way you can do this is by, again, technology is by ensuring you have the right technology, but moreover, having the right people behind the technology, trained people that would ensure that they're able to tune the system, understand the system, and be able to tell what the policies are saying from a system perspective. There's no point in saying your policy saying don't log in more than 5 times, but in your SIM, there's no correlation bringing that out. So some people might have a correlation of saying, person can log in more than 20 times, and your policy says 5. That's a mismatch right there. That's why I said that you need to ensure that the processes are well implemented and defined from a tooling or technology perspective. The people, I always go back to the people. I always say the people need to be trained to be able to detect any malicious activity, because at the end of the day, they need to understand what they're looking for. There's no point getting someone behind a technology that is not trained. So I always advise people, if you're going to be monitoring an event using a solution or a tool, you need to be trained in that tool to understand how it benefits you as well as your client or your customer or your employee. So that's my own area for detection. And I don't even want to take the other one.
Yeah, the next one should be analysis, right?
Yeah,
Now you've
that's it.
detected this. Now you need to analyze. So this is where you need to ask the right questions so that you can say, oh, is this really an event? Is it really an incident? What is it exactly? Is this what part of the organization is affected? You really want to pin it down. And baseline level of severity, you must be able to say, maybe in your policy, you have three categories: high, medium, low. You must be able to say, oh, this particular incident is high, is medium, or low. This is where you do it. And the scope. Who is affected? What system is affected? What department is affected? What information is affected? Then you can take it on a notch upper. What kind of standard or regulation that is also attached to this? So you need to be able to do that. Then also controls. So sometimes you also need to think about, is there any control in place? Is there which control? Who's the third party that is handling this kind of solution? Do we need to reach out to a vendor or a partner? All of this. Then this is what is going to narrow down to, how do we mitigate this? So all of that have to be covered in the analysis phase. So you can use maybe free tools to do threat hunting. You can go to Virus Total to identify, is it a malware? Has it been, what variant is it, and all of that. Whatever your method is, this is analysis phase is where you need to pin it down.
And after that, we all know what's next. Notification. The point is, who needs to know when an event or an incident or a breach occurs? And this is where we come to, it's called Escalation Matrix. In every notification and every incident response plan, there should be an escalation matrix. Who needs to be woken up at 2 a.m. in the morning when there's a breach? Who needs to give the call to shut down the system? Who needs to make that call of whether or not an attack is going to cause the company XYZ? There must always be an escalation matrix within your incident response plan. And remember, your incidents, your notification matrix is not just notification internal. It can also be external. Do external agencies need to be called? Do the undercover police, do the police intelligence unit need to be called to look into it? If you have a cyber security within your country, do they need to be informed of such breaches? In some countries, whenever there's a breach of PII data, you are forced to inform local intelligence units, such as either the SET, the individual themselves, or some other law enforcement unit that, this cyber attack has occurred within your organization that caused you XYZ number of users that were affected and things like that. So we should always take note. You need to always look at escalation metrics, internal and external, and always consider notification changes. And what most people tend not to, when I say notification changes, when people move within an organization, people fail to update the matrix. So, and that is one core thing I look out for. Whenever somebody moves, I go through the entire incident response plan, even the policies, just to make sure that individuals are not within the policy, shall I say, except they are in the critical part. So if it's things to report, I like to do it to a group. But if it's people to make a call, as in to shut down incidents or things, then the individual are on the critical part, and you have to ensure that is up to date. But if it's a notification system, I do it in a group. But if it's to make a call, a judgment call, that is an individual that is in a critical part, and then they would have to be addressed. Every time anybody moves, you review that matrix.
Yeah.
Next one is
Fantastic.
remediation and recovery, right?
Fantastic.
This is the best one.
I think you and I will dive into this. You know, this is one of the critical things that in all the stage, in all your preparation, analysis, detection, notification, and all of that, this is the stage where the hard work, you need to roll off your sleeves and do that. And this is where you need to implement measures to be able to return the organization to a secure state. But first of all, you need to make a judgment call. Everybody, when you reach this incident level, whoever needs to be involved needs to say, are we going to do more like a first aid here? That means we are going to implement a temporary measure. It might just be block this from sending further email, just like that. Or just block this port on the firewall for now, while we are still doing that. So there might be a need to do that. And how do you get to that? Is when you know, based on your procedure, what you need to do, who needs to do that. Or even your end user support guys needs to just unplug a particular system from the network or disconnect the Wi-Fi. And that's it.
And I think you pointed it out because in this particular stage, you have to take documentation of all the changes that occur. Like I said, the chain of custody is more important even at this stage because you have to document everything, who has given the approvals, what changes have occurred. Everything needs to be documented in detail. You remember that this stage is the stage that you're going to try to, like you said, put the business back into operations while still undergoing investigation of what has occurred. So it's a very critical phase in the incident response plan because at this stage is when you know whether or not the business can come back live or you're still going to have to shut down for a long time. At this stage, everything needs to be documented. The network, systems, firewall rules, all that needs to be documented thoroughly at this stage.
One of the critical areas, you cannot do it alone. Whether you are incident response manager or you are SOC professional manager or you are IT operation, this is a point you don't do things alone. You can take a decision and do temporary measure. I agree. If that is completely under your control, which in most cases in organization is actually more like everybody have their role of what they can do. You probably don't have access to the firewall, for instance. And if you do, of course, you don't have access to any other system altogether in a proper organization. So you have to coordinate stakeholders. You have to bring people together. So as an incident manager or incident handler or incident response manager, whoever that role is that you need to be in this organization or part of, there should be coordination. There should be collaboration. And then you can decide whether even what you're implementing right now is a short-term or a long-term remediation. Yeah. As Babs and I always say, there's no absolute security. There's no 100% security.
Absolutely.
So at this point, everybody needs to decide. While we have done the temporary measure to just maybe reduce the impact a bit, there should be proper implementation of long-term or short-term remediation. And most importantly, Babs, they need to do what? They need to return the business back to a secure state.
Of course, a secure state. That's the goal. That's the goal of
where everybody can operate and remove the incident or whatever event that has happened completely out of the business.
So moving on to the last one, I think everybody knows this one is the lesson learned, and is a phase that more or less everything that occurs within an incident, you must learn a lesson. If you do not learn any lesson from an incident that occurs, it's only going to occur again and again and again. So that's why I stated clearly that you need to document. And once you document at this phase, you're learning what the gaps were. Sorry. Did you forget? Was it a firewall rule you missed? Was it a particular rule in your SIM that wasn't configured properly? Was it a particular rule in the IP IDS that was not configured properly? At the end of the day, when you document all this, the point is you're able to correct it, and this should not be an incident that occurs again. An incident can still occur, but it should not be the same incident that occurred if you did the incident response plan properly. And even if it's the same incident, you have a better and quicker and systematic way to address the incident quickly. So at this stage, to me, it's more about learning, updating the playbook, like I mentioned earlier, and being on top of the incident response plan systematically throughout.
Absolutely. One thing that I also want to mention on top of this is the fact that your documentation must be so good, not voluminous, not like you are writing a whole encyclopedia, no, but must be so good that even when you employ someone else who is completely a novice or a trainee or an intern can pick that particular documentation and understand all the steps that you took to close that incident. Don't forget, an incident can come back over and over again, not because you didn't do it the first time. I hope you did everything well, you close everything. Some things you cannot close permanently. How do you respond to it when that incident happened is part of your documentation. And again, that might also help to see what are the gaps in your plans. What are the gaps in your training, awareness in the organization? What are the gaps in your policy? What are the gaps in your procedure? All of that. So this part is critical. But, Babs, there's one thing on my mind that everybody seems to ask. Like, so who should be part of incidents? In order to be able to all of this, it's a lot.
So I think for me, in an incident it's top down. Almost everyone from the executive level operations, it is a top down, because an incident occurs everywhere that uses an IT system that is deemed critical. So, and what I mean by everyone, you could have a system that is not used, is not seen as critical to the organization, but unfortunately is linked to the organization and can be used as a hub to attack the organization internally. So you could have different systems within the organizations, and someone can attack one person up onto another system to gain access to critical data or critical things within the organization. So when you're doing the incident response plan and you're going through it, you're noticing that you're looking at devices or the way they got into the organization from a non-critical assets. Because your focus is on critical assets. But if you do not focus on non-critical assets that have a direct or indirect link to your system, is where the problem is. So that's why I say it's a top-down approach. Everybody will be in the kill. I won't call it a kill chain. Everybody will be in the incident response plan, but you need to categorize who at what level will they be part of that incident response plan. So I'll put definitely the executives, anyone in operations, communication,
IT operation.
IT operations. There are many more. There are many more. Any other ones from you?
Definitely, when incident happens, one of the key things is communication.
Yeah.
You must be able to know who needs to know. One. Then you need to relay that message. If it needs to go to the public or it needs to go to a third party, definitely is not IT professional that will do that communication to external. So you must have public relation person, communication department right there. That's going to happen. Definitely some things borders on legal. So you must have a legal person, a company secretary, or any third party that your organization have assigned as a legal person to be part of the team.
Absolutely.
Just on standby. Which one do you think of again?
I'm HR. I think HR is. I'm a big fan of HR because they've gotten me on my job so far. So so HR because the HR needs to know who has been affected as well, and HR sometimes is, shall I say, the bottleneck in terms of internal what do you call it, cyber attacks. When I say internal, I mean like malicious people coming into the organization. The first defense is actually HR because the HR does the screening, the HR does the review of the candidates and, says, okay, this candidate is good, this candidate meets the requirements of the manager. So it's always good that your HR is always involved in any incident response because they would know as well whether or not people they are hiring or not hiring are malicious within the organization. So for me, when I say incident response from an HR perspective, it's just keeping them informed. So if it's someone internal that is doing something malicious, obviously that needs to be escalated, and that is when the HR comes in. Not something they're going to do. HR is not going to do anything technical, but if it's something malicious from an internal employee, the HR gets involved.
Yeah, because in the policy there will be something written that if you violate this policy, there's this that discipline or termination. So HR needs to be able to take care of that. So and you don't want to. People are involved in the incident anyways. So if it's internal employee, you want to be sure that you are not trampling on the right of that employee. So, and who else can you contact to be able to make the right judgment? It's HR, not you. So another one that I believe should be looked at is who is your external party? Who's your service provider? Are they involved in this? So I've seen where even external providers or service providers are the ones managing SOC in some organization.
Well, true.
So you need even your antivirus provider. Even those guys can provide an agent for you that can quickly wipe out a malware. So if you don't have that contract with them already, or you don't have that contact or who to escalate to technically, you are done for. Because at that point, you'll not be able to do that. And in some rare cases where you need to break into your data center to do something quickly, you need physical security as part of that. So these are the typical kind of people that you need to put in your team. But the first should be executive. Someone in the executive role who can help you to navigate that upper level. And if you're an executive leading this, then you're fine.
Yeah. And the executive needs to make some calls when an incident response happens. So yes, it's definitely them for sure.
So for me,
that's
incident response.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a short form, if you want to know more, please do contact us as
JU team at Just Unsecure. Thank you all. See you later.